In other news, the 31st of March marks International Transgender Day of Visibility, dedicated to celebrating transgender people and raising awareness of discrimination faced by transgender people worldwide. The day was created by Rachel Crandall of Michigan in 2009. It has since grown to be a global celebration of transgender existence and identity. Joining us now to speak about the significance of this day is Melody Seherrie, Community Engagement Officer for transgender rights advocacy group Gender Dynamix. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me, Tepiso.
So, Melody, if you could just tell us, when we talk about transgender people, what are we talking about, and do you identify as transgender?
Yes, indeed, Tepiso. I identify as transgender. And when we speak of transgender people, we speak of persons that do not necessarily relate to the sex assigned at birth.
Okay, so are they also, I know we're still learning, are they non-binary, or do they identify once they've transitioned their gender to being either gender?
I mean, they could be non-binary, and they can also decide on their gender identity as soon as they came to realization of who they are and how they want to show up in the world.
Okay. So the day itself, tell us a little bit more about the intention behind it. How is it observed or celebrated? And is there a cause for observation of it, say, for instance, in a country like South Africa?
Yes, most definitely there is a need for Transgender Day of Visibility to be celebrated. This, as most of the trans community is forced underground and are not allowed to express their gender identity. And in the context of South Africa, I think we are good, but we still have a long way to go, as we still need a lot of acceptance of the trans community.
So tell us a little bit more about the experiences of transgender people, because as you say, a lot of it happens underground, and I'd imagine that's because of an environment of fear.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, the lived realities of trans people are those of living and growing up in very hostile communities and societies where transgender persons are not necessarily accepted to firstly identify the way they do and the way we do, and then also families are not sensitized, and they do not have the knowledge on how to engage trans persons. This leading to a lot of discrimination and ostracization within the
Are you able to share a little bit about your journey? At what point did you realize that the gender assigned to you at birth was not what you felt was the right one for you, or what you wanted to continue living as? Just share a little bit more of your journey.
So my journey began at age 9, 10, where I realized that I'm not comfortable in the body that I was born in, and subsequently because at the time we didn't have the right terminology, and one would first identify as a gay man even though it still didn't feel right. And at the end of the day, when the knowledge and resources became available, I then transitioned firstly socially, then medically, and then also, like in the South African context, I am able to transition legally.
I do apologize for asking you to just repeat some of that again, Melody, because the line was broken there for a bit. So were you saying that you were born as a boy, as a man, and you transgendered socially and then eventually to that of a woman? Is that what you're saying? I'm sorry to ask that again, but the line was breaking.
No problem, Tepi. So I was born as male. I socially transitioned, that is through the affirmation of clothing, using makeup. I then medically transitioned by using hormones, and like I said, in the South African context, we are fortunate enough to legally transition, that is by having access to legal gender recognition, and I am now identified as a female.
And
does ID documents.
And does that mean you're able to legally change in your legal documents the gender as well?
Most definitely, it's a piece of art. However, transgender persons have multiple struggles with the Department of Home Affairs, where we firstly are deemed as we are pathologized in the sense that we need to provide medical letters and psychologist reports in order to show our transness. So our transgender trans community, is constantly burdened by the burden of proof.
Okay, so and I'm going to use the simplistic end of this, the dating scene, for instance. If you are meeting somebody for the first time, and people make assumptions, often based on how we look, how we dressed, even in a world that's fast changing, is it incumbent on you to declare at first, or are people growing more and more open and alive to, it's a person's identity, and when they reveal it is up to them and their comfortability levels? Just what are your experiences?
I really think that it is, for me personally, it would be one of declaring for safety reasons, because once someone do find out that you're transgender, you then experience this level of violence, and some could be very brutal and gruesome, that could even lead to death. But for me, I really think, and it is important for us to disclose that we are transgender. However, it shouldn't necessarily lead with one being transgender, because ultimately one is taken for the sake of love.
What about the workplace, where, for instance, if they, and you know this, the forms have not changed, even where some would even ask you the color of your eyes or your skin, so that they determine what some may say archaic terms, what you look like or how you identified. So how do you navigate that space? For instance, if they say looking for this gender for this role, and if you've transitioned, how do you handle that?
Yes, I think within our community we have multiple struggles with places of employment that constantly discriminates against trans and gender diverse persons. This purely because of their gender identity. I'm fortunate enough to work in a space where I'm surrounded by transgender persons. And unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody, but I think if workspaces were to become inclusive and sensitized to the needs of trans and gender diverse person, it would make society a bit better and more bearable for our community.
Ray, thank you for your time. Melody Seherrie just speaking to us about this day, the 31st of March, which has been identified as Transgender Day of Visibility.